Realme X7 Pro 5G. Experience the future. Realme, dare to leap.
Yeah, we are in the middle of a major test match series, but let that not take away from what the attention and where the attention is going to be today for all cricket fans. It's IPL Auction Day. It always brings with it a sense of intrigue and curiosity and excitement as we look forward to IPL 2021 in rather unique times. We're less than, 6 months from the last IPL. We're already looking at potential venue changes in IPL back home, played in a bubble. And all that is going to make for a fascinating conversation as 292 players go under the hammer. Only 61 slots actually up for grabs from the 8 franchises before everything almost hits a reset button in the big auction next year. This is ESPN Cricinfo's IPL Auction Day, presented and powered by Realme X7 5G and X7 Pro 5G. I'm Rana Kapoor. I'll be with you throughout this day. I won't be alone. We will have the illustrious company of Ajit Agarkar and Brad Hodge, both of whom have had enough of their share of the IPL in the past. And let's not rule out Gaurav Sundaraman, who knows auctions and T20 cricket more than any of us do. We tune in and out of auctions and IPLs. Gaurav watches all the other T20 cricket around the world, to be honest, so we can't do this without him. Some said hello to Brad Hodge, who we've not seen in quite a while. Hodge, you doing well?
Yeah, good to see you, Rana. Good to see Ajit and Gaurav. Yeah, certainly I'm well aware of this auction process and where everyone's going because Gaurav's picked everything. He knows it before it's going to happen. So, but it's good to be. It's been a long time, hasn't it? And last time I saw you, Ronak, you had a full head of beard. Now that's gone. You look fresh. You're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it'll be back by the end of the auction. Sometimes by the accelerated process, it goes that long that it'll probably grow back. Ajit Agarkar is here. He's seen enough of these auctions before. It's an interesting year, isn't it, Ajit? Lots of players, but not too many slots available. Some teams with a lot of money, some teams with virtually no money.
Yeah, not a lot of slots available. And also it's 1 year, isn't it? I mean, next year in all likelihood, or at the moment, the way it's scheduled, there is likely to be a big auction. So whoever teams pick right now is essentially for a year or this particular item, which then you plan accordingly. And people with a lot more money at the moment might have a bigger say in that because you're not looking too far forward unless the right player comes through. You can retain later. You're only planning for the next year.
Yeah, we did a preview to this on Run Order. If you've not caught that, you've got enough time to watch it before the actual auction starts. We'll be with you throughout. But Gaurav started that off with all my excitement on setting up a show. And then Gaurav poured cold water on it by saying, this may very well be a dull auction. So don't get too excited. Yes?
Yeah, because like Ajit and Hodge have said, it's a small auction just for 1 year. There are not many stars, big names in this lineup, especially the Indian domestic names. There are very few big ticket buys. So that's why the kind of bidding wars we usually see may not be there. It will be there for the first 1 hour maybe, but after that it is going to die down.
Right. It's a very direct prediction from GS early on, but I've learned that auctions can be very, very unpredictable and they often defy conventional wisdom. So if you look at the stars that are part of it, and maybe we'll go to Hodge's part of town because the Melbourne Stars did see Glenn Maxwell once again put on the show that he tends to put on literally everywhere but the IPL. And that thought will be on everyone's mind. He's in the auction again. There's every chance people may go crazy for him, or would the IPL have gotten smarter? Hodge, it's a discussion for every auction, and all eyes on how Maxwell goes.
There's every chance, isn't there? Who knows what can happen, especially when Glenn Maxwell steps up to the plate. We've seen in the history of the past where he's been a $2 million man every time. So there's no reason why that can't happen again. We've seen, as you mentioned, it's crazy, unpredictable stuff. When you know that certain teams, Simon Kadich said, I think it was yesterday, that when you know that certain teams go for someone like what happened to Pat Cummins last year, then certain franchises just keep bidding up and push the price up. So there's all sorts of little cat and mouse games as well underneath the table, working out who's going to spend the money and where. But in terms of the Australians, they're always, well liked and well sought after. But I'm sensing a little bit different this year, actually. I think there's going to be some smart buys. I'm not sure they'll be looked upon as, high-priced profile players they have in the past.
Okay, Ajit, Maxwell is a very intriguing conversation because we've seen what he's capable of. We've also seen that it doesn't quite come off in spite of all that big money and big reputation season after season. Will IPL franchises get smarter about the value of Maxwell in the IPL?
it's sometimes what your team really needs, isn't it? I mean, that then you look at a player. He's obviously, we keep talking on Maxwell because the kind of ability that he has, unfortunately, doesn't seem to turn up in the IPL for that reason. Every time he plays for Australia, he seems a different player. In fact, last IPL, at one point, he was playing more as an off spinner than a batsman. There was a stage in the IPL. So whether they'll get smarter or not, it could well depend on whether two or three teams really need him. There are a couple of teams who need a middle lower order batsman to finish innings off, and they might be looking at him and could easily drive the price higher. But yeah, I'm sure the franchise would have gotten a lot smarter. But like Haji said, you never know how the auction suddenly turns up. There's a
Yeah.
couple of teams with lots of money who might want to have an experienced player, and if they decide to bid for him, then could well drive the price up. His performances in the IPL certainly don't say that he should be one of the highest paid people, but auctions can be a very funny place.
Yeah, it is. There have been funny places. About requirements now, you look at teams that, in spite of what their budgets are, they certainly need to fill gaps. Chennai strike you as one of those teams. Shane Watson is retired. They do have to look forward to a life beyond Dhoni at some point. Will that go into their calculations on potential leadership roles? That's where they stand. They're gonna have just under 20 crore. Kolkata and Hyderabad have a huge squad already, 22 players, so they don't have much business, you'd think. Kolkata as well, not much there. But Punjab and Rajasthan, along with Bangalore, come into this auction with a lot of money. And as you can see, Bangalore have a lot of slots to fill as well. I'll just come back to that point, though. You know that CSK are going to be interested for certain positions. One of those names is Maxwell Gaurav. The other one we've discussed is actually Steve Smith, released by the Royals. And who knows, maybe that could also, in spite of the below par IPL that Smith had, could very well see someone pay good money for Steve Smith, looking at the slots that are available.
Yeah, I think they need that power hitting. Steve Smith is again one of those players like Dhoni trying to take his time. He tried being very aggressive last year and it didn't really work out. So I think that he may not be their first choice. They might come and bid for him later if he's still available. But I think they would prefer someone like Maxwell or Moeen Ali to come there and maybe win a couple of games for them. I think that's how they would look at Maxwell. And on the point about Maxwell, I think in this auction again, like Maxwell we've seen Maxwell in various other auctions. He's a standout. He doesn't have too much competition. So that even though teams don't want to buy him for so much money, just that the upside is so high, and the next best player after Maxwell for that same role is possibly maybe Moeen Ali. So when it comes to Maxwell or Moeen Ali, I think the perception is Maxwell is a better player to punt on. So that's how franchises might look at it. So for no fault for someone who's not scored a single six in the last IPL, he might be a millionaire now.
He's been a millionaire in the past, and GS again driving home one of these absolute rippers of numbers. But let's focus on some other high-profile names. We've got a package for you on the top 5 names that we think could earn some serious money. Let's have a look at that and come back and carry the chat forward with Haji, Ajit, and GS. Okay, interesting bunch of names that we saw. Before I go to Hoji and Ajit, I want to ask GS, did you compile this list, GS?
Not really, but I did give suggestion.
Okay, I can understand a few of those. Harbhajan Singh's name is a curious one. Played with Ajit Agarkar, of course, for a part of his career, and still wants to play on. Harbhajan didn't feature in last year's IPL. I saw a piece that I think GS had authored saying it could be a year for finger spin, where the finger spinners could be more in demand. Ajit.
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't know quite what the venues are, isn't it? Most likely, the
Yes.
teams before they go into the auction might be told that, in all likelihood, the signs are that it will be in India, which is great. Uh, if it does happen, then teams will accordingly plan. Then the spin suddenly becomes a huge factor. We saw last year in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai, the seamers, had a bit more over the spinners, and then the teams without those sorts of options struggled a little bit. So Harbhajan Singh, curious one because he pulled out last year due to personal reasons and hasn't had any cricket over the last 2 years. Really, doesn't play domestic cricket. So an interesting one. But if the tournaments played in India, he certainly becomes a factor. I mean, Chennai Super Kings used him mainly when they played in Chennai. His bowling. MS Dhoni opened with him a lot when they played in Chennai. So those sorts of things teams might look at. It may not be a first choice, but certainly a very, very experienced option to have.
Yeah, now ideally, and these aren't ideal times, Hoji, but you've been part of an IPL setup in the past, a franchise setup. This is such a curious one, right? Last year we didn't know where the venue was going to eventually be played. It was eventually moved to the UAE. I don't know how much of a factor that had on certain teams. But would you have liked in an ideal world for just the venue to be committed to the franchises, confirmed? That could play a big part in the way you go about your auction.
Huge part, actually. Yeah, exactly what Ajit was just saying. That you probably use a lot more horses for courses players in India than you do somewhere else. So when it does get hot and late into the tournament, it does take spin. So your variations around your spinners become critical, and also your overseas players and how you structure up as well. Just looking at those lists that Gaurav put together. If you pay big money for these players, you also feel obliged that they're first picked in the 11. Now, all these players have been left out by particular franchises, so they're not first four picked. So it's interesting how much money you pay for them, and how much use you're going to have. You don't really want too much money parked on the bench. So the venues are actually critical to know how you're going to structure up your team. I know at Kings 11 Punjab, we had trouble like that when we moved from up in Punjab to indoor. Yes, that caused us a lot of problems, and our spinning unit couldn't cope. So, they're little issues that you got to deal with as an owner and as a management group.
Yeah, the one thing is the venues, which remain uncertain. There is an India-England series going on, and thankfully without any events. So you'd assume now with international cricket back that India would remain first priority to have the IPL. The other unknown variant, of course, is the fact that the big auction comes in next year. So does this change the way this auction's treated, GS? No long-term investments, no uncapped players that will go for big money because of some hope that they'll tee off in season 2 or 3. Is that a possibility that we may not see as much interest in the uncapped players given what's going to happen in a year?
The rules have been pretty similar last 3 years, where it's a 1-year contract in terms of the player. Even though you have to have the core team, the big auction is only once in 3 years. So this has kind of been the approach. So people want to win that immediate season. Yes, teams like Delhi have invested on youngsters and from a more long-term point of view. But if you look at CSK, they didn't do that. They wanted to win this particular 3 years. They wanted to do well, and they invested on experienced people. So I guess you are spot on about the fact that the next year big auction is a new team coming in, so we have no idea about retentions, rules, etc. So I don't think teams will look too far ahead.
All right, that is a very, very interesting point, isn't it? The fact that the big auction comes in, who do you retain, who do you let go of? I don't know if there are certain teams that would want this auction to be further delayed. There are also 2 new teams coming, so there's that to consider. Now let's look at some players that you may not have heard much of that have impressed and we think may be of some serious interest in this auction. Have a look. through a list of players that now soak that all in as we went through a list of players that you may or may not have heard much about. There are some established internationals there, but haven't had much to do in the IPL. Therefore, in this in that package, and who's to say that some of those silhouettes won't have names and faces and figures by the end of the IPL? They tend to throw up a few surprises. But are we likely going to see franchises go for more established, even international players? David Malan's the number one ranked batsman, Ajit. Kyle Jameson's looked a proper player in Test cricket, even though may not have T20 credentials. Could franchises go more that way if they have to, rather than the uncapped Indians, which tend to be a more long-term sort of process?
Yeah, to an extent, I think you would think so, because we are only talking about the next IPL or this particular IPL, and then teams can plan further. But there are some young guys who would have impressed. There's a lot of scouting that gets done, and fortunately, we had the Mushtaq Ali trophy right now, which would have given some of these franchises a clue of who can be a good fit for them in terms of uncapped players. So certainly there'll be a lot of people looking at, say, someone like a David Malan or Jameson, or those sorts of guys in the auction, or the Richardson. But they also want to fill slots with small. There are, like I said before, there are a couple of franchises which have a lot more money than some of the other ones.
Yes.
But those other ones don't really need a lot of players to fill. It's more backup players or bench strength that they need more than first team players. So there'll obviously be more demand for the experienced player, because it's just for this particular IPL.
Okay, that's a good question to go to. Just under 2 minutes for the auction to start. We think there'll be a few formalities, and then they'll actually get to the players with the sets will start coming up. So we'll be with you throughout. But on that point of money, you have Punjab and then Bangalore and Rajasthan have some serious money, Oji, and some that don't. This kind of auction, which we're considering to be a smallish auction, just a few players up for grabs, is it a bigger advantage to have money in these auctions?
Well, traditionally, there are two teams at the top who love to actually save some coin, don't they? So I'm not sure in the history of IPL have those two teams ever gone the full purse.
Yes.
So it's interesting. Each side's got their core of players now, and we talked earlier about just adding and filling the holes. Does it help to have an advantage of purse? Absolutely, yeah, it does, because you don't want to be short stacked at a table when you actually want to buy a particular player. But all in all, whether they go and spend, I can't see both those franchises spending crazy amounts of money on people that they aren't going to use. So that's one thing that we'll see. I think we'll be more clear on that this year than ever, because they won't want to keep them for the future. It's just now, and I agree with Ajit. I think an experience will be something to look out for. And keep an eye out for the English players too. I think they're really high up there on the demand list.
Okay, has that sort of been a change as well? Mushtaq Ali now happens before the auction. The Big Bash has happened before the auction. There used to be about 3 or 4 years, a serious premium on Big Bash players. We saw Jai Richardson, who kicked off that package, who ended as the leading wicket taker in the Big Bash. Have things changed on that front, Hoji? There are players that have done very well in the Big Bash that haven't quite fired in the IPL. Would Big Bash players still hold top bidding in these franchises as things stand, or do the English players to some degree now have more premium?
I think it's sort of that out of sight, out of mind thing for the English, in past history of IPL, and whether they've been actually available. And certainly the Big Bash does help, where all the talents of the players have been showcased over the last 2 months. So they're very much fresh in the minds of all the Indian franchises. But even throughout the Big Bash, what I saw was the English imports that came in had a serious impact. And we've seen in the past where players that haven't had international experience have really struggled to grasp the IPL and how tough it is, and the demands and the expectations. So for me, I'm a little bit leaning towards, I don't think you'll see a lot of uncapped players getting opportunities this year. I think it'll be, if you're a tried and tested player and we need you, we'll find a spot for you.
Okay, let's just also look at player availability in terms of countries. That's always something you should keep ready for. There's not as much international cricket nowadays when the IPL is going on. There is a South Africa-Pakistan series that is scheduled for a part of that. So we're not sure of confirmation from the South African players. Full availability for pretty much all those sides, other than England and New Zealand, who have a series that kicks off closer to the start of the English summer. It starts with the Test series. So that's about just managing it with the franchises. If players can still be spared for the end parts of the IPL, that shouldn't be an issue for sides. But otherwise, no major alarms. There are not a lot of Bangladesh players, not a lot of Ireland or Zimbabwe players. Sri Lankan players also fairly limited. So it looks like everyone's pretty much available for a large part of that series. One player that we didn't speak of, South African, since we spoke of South African confirmation, but Chris Morris was, I don't know if it was a bit of a surprise to see him released, but a kind of player that, in spite of mid-30s and has his share of injuries, whether he'd still be up for a serious bid this auction. GS, Chris Morris?
Yeah, again, the injury is a big concern. He's not been able to finish seasons, or he didn't start RCB season last time. Didn't missed out on the crucial games again. So that's too much of a risk, right? When you're investing so much on a player. So maybe RCB may buy him back if he comes in slightly cheaper. But he's not been playing for South Africa as well. So it's a very tricky call. These injuries thing can happen to anybody for that matter. So I think franchises will maybe go for him and just keep him purely for the lack of other options. Again, you're comparing a Morris to a Jimmy Neesham and a Dan Christian, a Moises Hendricks. If you personally ask me, I might go for someone like Dan Christian, who's at a peak of his form and he's likely not to be injured. But Morris, there's too much of concern over the injury. So it's a tricky one, to be honest. I don't have a right answer there, but because of the status of his injury.
I think I think he could be an important player. I think there'll be a couple of guys. I mean, Mumbai, you look at they've released quite a few seamers or overseas seamers. They're certainly looking for an overseas seamer. It fits the bill. When he came back after his injury for RCB, did really well towards the latter part of that IPL. I mean, he was their spearhead. He bats down the order, provides that. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't go for big money. I think one of the reasons why, which I understand, and I some quite don't understand why RCB what he was at 10 crores, but he was a key player for them. So I'm sure they're looking to buy him back a little bit cheaper. But whether that will work out that way, I'm not sure, because he can be an important player. And like we keep saying, it is for this particular IPL, and then you can start planning ahead from the next big auction. So was a little bit surprised, but I think it was the money that they spent on him, and they feel they can get him a bit cheaper. Is probably why.
Never works, does it, Ajit? It never works. Never works. We haven't seen it work ever. You think you can save some crores on a few players, they go by 2 or 3 crores more than your expectation.
I mean, Yuvraj Singh is a great example. I think they released him for 14 crores and bought him back for 16 or something. Or was it the other way around? But it was. So exactly that. I mean, and especially for a team like RCB who need that sort of player in their lineup. That's why I was a little bit surprised.
All right. The auction has now officially begun. We're going to have a first set of players that will be announced shortly, which includes some high-profile players. GS mentioned, Dan Christian, who comes with the form of red-hot BBL success. Aaron Finch is part of this, who doesn't come off a great BBL. It's been a shocking BBL for a year or two now for the Renegades. Other than the players in that first set we should look out for, Alex Hales is there. He was the top run getter in the Big Bash. Karun Nair has been released by Punjab. He's going to feature in that first set. So too Steve Smith. And there's also Hanuma Vihari is the only Indian member of that first set. Now, let's look at some of those names that will come up early on. Steve Smith, not quite the T20 player as he is in other formats. Didn't enjoy a happy time with the Rajasthan Royals. Is there going to be a big appetite for Steve Smith? Is that very franchise-specific? Can you see 1 or 2 franchises that will be really in for Steve Smith? GS, you can start off, and I'll go to Haji and Ajit after that.
Definitely. See, I think whether they all bid heavily upfront, I'm not really sure, but that's a gamble you need to take. Where he comes in, we need to see among the guys in the first set. But I think there will definitely be interest. Even Rajasthan can look to buy him back if he comes in. He was worth 12 crores, and now if they get him for half the price or slightly lesser, it makes a lot of sense. I think Steve Smith adds a lot of value in various aspects. He's an excellent fielder. He can be at a leadership role, and I'm sure he has the game. He has scored the T20 centuries before. I think there will definitely be interest. I did read quite a lot saying that Steve Smith might go unsold. Even if he doesn't get bid immediately, maybe he will get a bid in the accelerated auction, but I think he'll get a bid early on.
What kind of franchises? Ajit, just looking around, CSK would look at someone who can be a potential leader going forward. I don't know how many Indian options there are up for grabs. RCB have some spots to fill as batters. What are the teams that will look for Steve Smith?
Yeah, I think Chennai it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, from the leadership role point of view, maybe a backup to Faf as well.
Yes.
That sort of role. Uh, yeah, it's it. I mean, look, I'd be very surprised if no one bids for Steve Smith.
Yeah.
The challenge is always because he'll be first up. A lot of people would be thinking how much money to actually spend on him because he may not end up being your sort of main player immediately. Rajasthan Royals might want to buy him back. RCB, I don't see why RCB would. They've released Aaron Finch. I mean, they always keep buying top order players. They need somebody in the middle or lower middle order is what they look at. So I think Chennai and Rajasthan are two interesting sort of picks. Apart from that, I can't see anyone in a need of a Steve Smith at this point.
Haji?
Yeah, I agree with Ajit actually. Just looking at that, when you pin him up against someone like Alex Hales or Glenn Maxwell, for example, although he's a great fielder, he's still a one-dimensional sort of player. Where Glenn Maxwell's a two or three-dimensional player. So it's a really interesting conundrum. But yeah, I see that. I don't think he's going to be a first picked priority, but he'll certainly add a lot of value wherever he goes. And I'd see that there's a huge amount of leadership which he'd bring to a franchise. He's done well apart from Rajasthan wherever he's been, so that's not an issue. He's got good pedigree, and his numbers are actually pretty good in 2020, even though you don't see him as a massive, six hitter. So, but Glenn Maxwell didn't hit a six last year, so it's an interesting conundrum for Steve.
I mean, if
Sorry,
you
Ronak, just one more thing that completely slipped my. Delhi Capitals could look at him. I mean, one of the things I felt Delhi Capital lacked last year was some sort of leadership role. I mean, their overseas players did really well. Whether he fits instantly in their 11, I'm not sure. With Stoinis, Rabada, those guys doing really well. Hetmeyer had a decent IPL as well. But there could be a role for him there because there are lots of young Indian players in that, and even the overseas guys. You can't see any sort of ready-made leader as such. I mean, his addition could help Delhi Capitals quite a bit, in my opinion.
It's a very interesting point. Steve Smith and Ponting together at the Capitals. Now, it's not like they've got gun overseas slots all filled up either, right? You've got Rabada, who's one gun slot. You can look at whether you want to go with a Hetmeyer in the middle. Can that role be played by an Indian alternative? There is Andrik Nokia, who was excellent last year. And they did release Jason Roy and Alex Carey, so they still have some room for someone who can bat along with Marcus Stoinis, who you think is another gun player in their 11. So that's a very interesting one. Steve Smith potentially at the Delhi Capitals. Now the capped batsmen and the capped all-rounders will kick things off. So you will have the likes of Maxwell, Morris, Steve Smith, all within the first 14, Shakib Al Hasan and Moeen Ali as well. Couple of Indian players in that. Now, I wonder whether these Indian players are going to go for big money, considering the lack of Indian all-round options that there are. Experienced ones, Ajit. Shivam Dubey is one, underperformed at RCB. K. Gautam is one, underperformed to a degree at Rajasthan and at Kings 11 for the high money that he was for. Kedar Jadhav, if you consider him an all-round option. Any of those names that you think could be of serious interest, given the lack of Indian all-round capped options there are?
See, again, Gautam, I mean, if the tournaments in India again becomes a little bit of an option for teams. I mean, he's gone for big money before. Rajasthan Royals had him for big money, and they perhaps didn't think that he was, he justified that sort of spend on him. So, but he's certainly an option because he can bat and bowl. Shivam Dubey perhaps hasn't had I mean, even though he's played for RCB, perhaps sometimes you just don't settle in a team, whatever that reason could be. But certainly has the ability. I mean, I've seen him play for Mumbai. I know the standards are completely different when it comes to domestic cricket and when you go and play in the IPL, but has the ability to hit big and bowl a few overs. So always an option. And Indian players, if you can get, especially at the number that he bats, 5 or 6, it's always difficult. But if you can get somebody batting there, it's always an option. Kedar Jadhav, I won't be surprised if Chennai Super Kings try and buy him back slightly cheaper. Or is it he's gone for the highest base price, isn't it? So I don't quite know whether there will be too many takers for Kedar Jadhav, but Indian options are always handy, especially, I mean, I know we're repeating ourselves because it's just one season that you're looking at this point.
All right. So the auction has officially begun. First player to come out of whatever it is they call it now, the bowl or the basket or whatever it might be, is Karun Nair. And Brijesh Patel, the IPL chairman, has kicked things off. So Karun Nair, released by Kings 11 Punjab last season. Such a well-known player across the domestic circuit, has played, of course, for India. And base price was 50 lakh. Kings 11 got him for what, little under 6 crore when they picked him up a couple of auctions back. So Karun Nair is the first name that's kicked off, and it does look likely that there hasn't been a bid early on for Karun Nair, which is very interesting. So whether this could be the way to go, Alex Hales has popped up as I speak, but Karun Nair not so. So this is again franchise is not wanting to commit too early, depending on the timing. Ajit.
Yeah, I think so. And look, he's had a tough time recently. I mean, it's been quite a fall for whatever reasons. He's done well before, but so again, because you're first out of the pot, and that's not your first options, teams will want to wait. So disappointed for him, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we got a nice picture of Karun Nair. Actually, he's probably waiting for a flight or a bus or something when this was taken with his bag on. So he's going to wait all of today as well. I'm sure at some point a player like Karun Nair will come up for interest. It looks like Alex Hales has also gone unsold. So all the runs in the Big Bash don't quite mean as much right now.
The thing is, I think the second set and the fast bowler set, right? They are all coming after, obviously after this set. So I think teams need to wait for that, which is why the first set you might see all these names in the accelerated auction. All want to be careful, especially the second set. Second set is where all the spending is going to happen, and the fast bowler set, like a guy like Kyle Jamieson, who a lot of teams want, is coming way below. So I need to keep 7-8 crores for him. I need to plan that. So that's why I expect these guys to come back.
Absolutely. I take your point, but I remember something similar, if my memory of the last auction serves me, when Mumbai picked up Chris Lynn at what was virtually a bargain. Nobody wanted him at that time, and it looked
I
like...
still think they just wanted to start the bidding as a good sign, and they just got hold of him.
Yeah, maybe an omen, a good omen. Steve Smith's come up as we speak, but this is the other way you can go about it, right? Is an Alex Hales not worth 1.5 crore if no one else wants to? But can you steal a player at this sort of stage? Haji, Steve Smith's picked up the first bid. We'll come to that once it's confirmed. But you can pick up a player at base price because the other franchises are all waiting. Are Hales and Jason Roy and all not quite there, worth even that?
I would say those two players are, yeah, for sure. And the reason is that Alex Hales is a gun player of spin, which doesn't always happen when you purchase an overseas player. We know how playing, being a good player of spin is valuable in India. So for me, Alex Hales, I think he'll find a home, but obviously franchises are going about it in a slightly different manner. We've seen this tactic before. We're well aware of it for sure.
Okay, so the first bid has come from this year's auction to Steve Smith from RCB. So there is an interest for Steve Smith from RCB. So there's Virat Kohli, there's AB de Villiers, Devdutt Padikkal has pretty much cemented a slot at the top of the order. And Steve Smith, it looks like there's no other interest. And just as we were about to see that, Ajit Agarkar had pointed out Delhi Capitals could be interested, and Delhi Capitals have joined the Steve Smith race. It looks like RCB against Delhi for Steve Smith. I got your logic for Delhi, and I totally get that, Ajit. What's the logic for RCB wanting someone like Smith?
I think they just like top order batsmen. I mean, because they don't need. I kind of understand. Maybe Virat will open or Steve Smith might open with Padikkal, and one of them will bat number 3, either Virat and Smith, and then they push AB down the order to try and finish the innings off. But they've been there before. I mean, one of the things that I felt RCB always struggle with is their sort of middle order or lower middle order batting. And it's not easy to find that sort of player because they can't find the right Indian fit. So you may as well look for an overseas option to bat there at the moment. And then sort of through the middle of the tournament, AB has to go down and bat, and not enough for him to...
I'll just cut you in, sorry, Ajit, because it was only that base price. They weren't interested anymore in that. So the minute Delhi Capitals put in a little more, it's done. RCB were trying to nick Steve Smith perhaps just for base price, but that slight bare minimum bid of 2 crore 20 lakhs has seen Steve Smith go the way of Delhi Capitals. Now that's very interesting. You called it before the auction, Ajit. Smith has gone to the Capitals now. Good signing at 2.2 crore.
Yeah, I think just the way their team is built, I think a lot of the younger guys could learn a bit from leadership. They might look at this. I felt last year that was one of the things that they struggled with. I think Shreyas Iyer was quite new to the job as well, and you could see when there was a little bit of pressure, you could see the team struggling a little bit. At times, you need leaders like Nokia, Rabada, and Stoinis are certainly the 3 guys that they will keep playing, or looks like they will be certainties in their 11. And there's always one slot open. with their opening problems as well, with Prithvi Shaw not quite doing well. They went back to Rahane and then went back to Prithvi Shaw. So that might be a slot that he might bat at as well. Plus the leadership, I think that end up being a very good buy for them.
Yeah, Stoinis invariably towards the end of that season did end up opening in the last two games, but he has done that finisher's role that's so exclusive in the IPL. So there is a chance that maybe Stoinis will go back to the middle, Smith up top, and Rahane is always a question mark whether you want to play him in the team or not. So just let's get thoughts from Hodgie and GS as well. Steve Smith to Delhi Capitals. Hodgie, thoughts?
Yeah, I like it. I think that's really good. Exactly what Ajit's pointed out. It's more the leadership as well to be able to work with Rishabh Pant and all the youngsters around him. They've got the talent. There's no doubt about it. The Delhi Capitals, and what Steve Smith brings to the table is just cricket smarts. He's a great trainer. He works hard, so he'll bring that natural culture of just working hard in the nets, honing your game. Loves to talk about cricket. So that's where it'll come to its fruition, along with Ricky Ponting. That's a pretty handy connection to pass on that knowledge down to the youngsters.
Okay, and a leadership role, as Ajit's also pointed out. GS, your thoughts? Smith to Delhi?
Yeah, I think Ajit was spot on in terms of leadership, as well as they always didn't know where to bat. See, last time when they started off, they batted Stoinis in the middle, and then towards the end, they got him as an opener. And if they play Stoinis and Dhawan as an opener, then Smith fits in at 3, and then Iyer 4, Pant 5. It works out pretty well for them. Hetmeyer again was batting out of position. Now I think Smith and Hetmeyer. I think now Hetmeyer will bench, and Smith can fit in right there. So I think this pretty good move, and the price they got is I think. It clearly shows that the demand for Smith is not so much, and Delhi got a steal. But yeah, I think we all knew that Smith is only not going to go for big money.
Yeah, and he's the only player in that first set of capped batsmen that has actually taken a bid. So the likes of Aaron Finch, Alex Hales, Karun Nair, Hanuma Vihari, Jason Roy have all gone unsold for now. There is a chance they would come back in the second round. We're now entering the all-rounders set, and the first name up is actually Glenn Maxwell. So this should be fun.
Again, he's lucky in this aspect.
Yeah, he's coming first, right? That's always fun. I'll come to it once I get the confirmed bid for Maxwell. But just Smith at that value of 2.2, could it have been pushed up a little bit? Could anyone have poked Delhi Capitals, who have come into this with just over 13 crore in their purse? That'll be just take a little bit. At 2.2, is that fair, or could you have just tried to poke that up a little bit, Hodgie?
Yeah, I think that's fair, actually, Ronak. I don't think you'll see a lot of cat and mouse in this auction. I think everyone's got their sort of lineup settled, and I think that's a fair price for Steve Smith. We've seen in the past 12, 13 crores. There's a lot of expectation on 12 crores. There's a lot of pretty good players out there for 2 crores as well. So, yeah, I'd say Delhi Capitals have they've ticked the box and they've got what they wanted for a really good price. Steve Smith himself probably think he's a little bit short of where he wanted to be, but all in all, I think that the market has determined a pretty fair and reasonable price. There's no they'll certainly play cat and mouse now with Maxwell.
All right. Maxwell's had a bit if Rajasthan jumped in first up, after which Kolkata Knight Riders, who don't have a lot, remember, in their balance, just over 10, little over 10.5 crore. And as Rajasthan pulled out pretty early out of that, it's now between Kolkata and Bangalore. So Bangalore showing an interest in Glenn Maxwell, and they've got the muscle in the purse, don't they? RCB have got 35.4 crore to spend at this auction. Kolkata have just under 11. The bid for Maxwell is already up at 4 crore with KKR and RCB. This is interesting, Hodgie. You say there's no cat and mouse, but every time you're in a two-way tussle with one team which doesn't have much, does that change things? Suddenly you've decided you're not going to spend too much, but the guy who's bidding on the other side is a team like Kolkata that has only 10.5.
Yeah, it does actually. You can just keep chipping away, and you can see, and you can also read the body language too of the group on the table if you're there. So you can there's a lot of stalling, a lot of chit chatting. So you're not far away from breaking them. So it's those little cat and mouse games which you like to see. If you've got a good purser in front.
Kolkata, very interesting, Ajit. They're showing an interest in Maxwell. You think they've got 4 gun players if everyone's fit and available in Russell, Narayan, Cummins, and Owen Morgan, the captain himself. So this is an interest shown as what, someone to be a backup to an Andre Russell if he's not fit, or can he outrank any of those four overseas players?
Yeah, and you look at there's a Lockie Ferguson as well who did so
Yes.
well for them. He might come into play. So yeah, look, again, depends on how much money they spend. They don't. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think Kolkata was the last team that I was thinking what might go for Maxwell, but it's probably that lower middle order. You don't quite know sometimes with the fitness of Andre Russell as well. And if he is going to struggle with his fitness, then that's a slot that they need to fill. And they don't really have too many slots to fill otherwise. With their Indian batting looking fairly sort of settled with Shubman Gill and Dinesh Karthik in that top order as well. So I think it probably is because of cover for Andre Russell, if you like, and it'll be a good cover to have as well because Nitish Rana, Shubman Gill, and Dinesh Karthik in the top five make it a fairly settled Indian sort of batting.
Yeah.
This is probably a backup to what they already have in terms of overseas guys.
Okay, it looks like Kolkata have bailed out. RCB is still interested, and just as RCB thought they could nick Glenn Maxwell, Chennai Super Kings have jumped in. So Super Kings are showing an interest. Maxwell in yellow, we've been building it up. That all of a sudden Maxwell in yellow could be a different force. There is no interest at the moment from Punjab, the new look Punjab Kings, who've always had some taste for Glenn Maxwell. But it looks like Chennai are interested in him. GS?
Chennai can actually go up to like 10, 11, 12 crores because they just need one player and they need maybe like a K. Gautam and Maxwell is an off spinner and he bowls quite well actually. He bowled well last time. So he fits two gaps for CSK. So they can actually go even close to 13, 14 crores if you ask me because they don't need anything else. They have a first 11 in place. So it's up to RCB now. RCB are under the pressure, under the pump because they can also go up to a certain amount, but they need to fill in other slots.
That's interesting. They had such a poor season last time, Ajit. GS says they actually don't need much. I'm wondering if you agree with that or not. Suresh Raina will obviously be back. That'll be a big plus for them. Ruturaj Gaikwad showed promise. You think he's going to seal a spot going into the next IPL. So do they not have as many gaps as we perhaps initially imagined? Will they just need a player like Maxwell, or can they do with more reinforcements at the top of the order with Watson's retirement and whatnot?
Not really. With Faf du Plessis still there, I don't think we need. I think they got caught out with the conditions as well in the UAE. I think they're reluctant to play any seamer for majority of the tournament, a quick bowler. And MS Dhoni persisted with two all-rounders in Bravo and Sam Curran, which didn't quite. I mean, you see all the successful teams in the previous IPL certainly played a quick bowler, whether it was overseas or an Indian quick. They did that, and they perhaps should have gone. But Ruturaj Gaikwad, has really filled a big hole with the way he batted in the last few games. Ravindra Jadeja has obviously improved his batting, and Suresh Raina's back. So I agree with JS. There's not too many holes to fill. Raidu is there himself with the experience, and if the tournament is in India, it changes the whole dimension with which CSK plays. So maybe one or two other sort of experienced players, and they might start looking strong again.
Yeah, there was a trade from Robin Uthappa as well, wasn't there, from Rajasthan Royals? So that's another experienced bat you've got if you want to use him. Now, Glenn Maxwell loves IPL auctions, right? He's up to nearly 10 crore, 975 and counting between Chennai and Bangalore. And I mean, we're going to discuss this. It's still not done, so we're not done with this. But is there a theory as well, Aji, that the price tag pressure, as much as we talk about it, he's such a good player, but every time there's big money on him, somehow, whether you admit it affects him or not, it just seems like it plays a part. We're up to 10 crore, by the way, to Maxwell as we speak. Good franchises said, we don't mind Maxwell, but let's not go over the top for him, even if sort of that is the requirement, because it's 10 crore now.
I've never understood how it's got to this, actually. Because, I mean, realistically, you have to look at the past, right? And go, well, if you pretty much had 8 years at it and you haven't nailed it, what's going to change this time? So, I mean, he's an extremely talented player. There's no doubt about it. Is he worth that sort of money again? Well, market value, yes, because the market's showing that. All I'm saying is that if you pick Glenn Maxwell at more than 10 crores, then he has to be in your starting lineup. It's as simple as that. You're not going to spend that amount of money and park him on the bench. So whoever's previously in your list is going to find someone's going to be out on the bench and find themselves extremely unlucky, for sure.
Ajit, we're up to 1075, by the way.
Yeah, I don't understand it. But again, what the teams require at that point, especially someone like a CSK. If they're looking for one or two sort of players or big names to fill that, they're going hard quite early and not taking that gamble that there might be another player who might be worth that kind of money. Uh, it's the auction, isn't it? It always throws up one or two things. But with Maxwell, I completely agree with Oji. I mean, for all the talent that he's got, he's not done anything in the IPL apart from those 4 or 5 games in the UAE in the what was it, 2014
Yes.
or something like that, which is quite incredible that the teams still keep going back. But it's because two teams want him desperately. The price keeps getting pushed up. Good luck to him, but I'm not sure whether that's going to really change anything, like Haji said.
It also, looking at the two teams that are going for it, I take your point, JS, on Chennai, and Ajit endorses that too. They don't have as many holes to fill. Bangalore do have some holes to fill, and they're putting effectively a third of their purse on a player like Maxwell. We're trying to figure out where he'd fit into this team. What role would he play? If you've got Padikkal, Kohli up top, AB de Villiers is certainly one of your overseas, and you think there is a lot of room for a bowler. But yeah, does he fit in straight away in that middle order sort of role for RCB?
I think
That's
so,
the fit.
Rana, because you're asking Haji, or Haji go?
Coming to you, GS.
No,
yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gaurav, you go.
I think he'll fit perfectly. Look, they're a team which can manage with 5 Indian bowlers if they want. So you have ABD, you have Kohli, and that reduces. If you have, they know that Maxwell's going to bat after them. I'm sure Kohli and ABD can bat more freely, and I think that's the biggest gap for them. And all the other slots, RCB can really buy cheap buy. So I think they put all eggs on Glenn Maxwell, and they feel that he'll basically fit in their biggest gap. So I think that's a fair estimate of why RCB are going so heavily for Glenn Maxwell.
I'd love a reaction from Ajit and Haji on that. Do they really need someone to make Kohli and AB bat freely? The players they let go of, Morris, Isuru, Udana, Dale Steyn, Umesh Yadav as well. They have Siraj, they have Saini, they have Yuzvendra Chahal and Washington Sundar. Daniel Sams was traded into this side, so they have that extra option. But somewhere you still think, Haji, that they need more bowling than batting.
It's been the case for over a decade, hasn't it, at the RCB, where continually, I think this is just, Virat looking through the eyes of a batter and going, we need to stack the batting. And it can easily happen. Like, I no doubt had that look through that same lens. But, you just, for many, many years, they've had such a talented batting lineup and just haven't been able to put it together with their bowling unit. Now, they've strengthened that over the last couple of years. They just need to add to it a little bit. It'll help having Kane Richardson there and also Daniel Sams. I think that's a good trade. But those two have to play. So then you've only got a couple of spots left. So maybe Glenn Maxwell, I don't know, maybe it's a radical move and Glenn can go up to the top and open the batting and play completely freely and try and do what he did against Sri Lanka when he represented Australia. But, it's going to be really tough.
We're up to over 13 crore. Now, while we say, brilliant, this is fun. Never count the auction to throw in a surprise or two. While we do say that, do they need bowlers? But the way they went down towards the end of the season last time, Ajit, including in the playoffs, it did look like, again, it was a bit of a batting failure that, if Kohli and AB don't fire, this team is still heavily too reliant on those two names. So would there be a sound logic in saying, then maybe they do need to strengthen the batting?
Yeah, but is Maxwell is Maxwell strengthening your batting? I'm not sure with his record in the IPL. So, because they released so many players and they kept that cash, but they clearly think that maybe then Virat can go up top and with Padikkal and there's AB can bat a little bit higher and Maxwell is going to try and finish the innings or the other way around. So. I don't quite understand it, to be honest. I think because we've had, and I hope I'm wrong and he has a great IPL, but we've had enough evidence over the years that he has struggled in the IPL, whether it's due to the price tag or whether it's, just not had form when he's come here or whatever the reason. He hasn't performed and that's why teams have let him go on such a regular basis. Otherwise, a player as talented as him would have stuck with one franchise.
Yeah, it looks like they're giving this all the time they need, right? There was a long delay. I don't know if the auction rules have changed in terms of how much time you can take to actually make your bid, but it looks like the auctioneer, Edmides, gave RCB an age almost to see if they were still interested in the bid, and they were. So it's now gone from 13 to 1350 to 1375 to now 14 crore because RCB and CSK are still very much interested in Glenn Maxwell. I don't know, GS, if that's because most of the head coaches and some of the captains aren't able to physically be present. I don't know if there's going to be more time allowance given to actually consult and check whether you want to make a bid or no.
Yeah, definitely. That is a reason. But again, Ronak, apart from Maxwell, the next best option is Moeen Ali, right? So if Chennai, for example, don't get Maxwell, they'll have to go for Moeen Ali. And when you look at the two players, similar skills, but somehow your perception and just the fact that Maxwell can win you those two games over Moeen Ali. So clearly that's the only reason, and I think that's why they can go. I think looks like they've stopped bidding. So yeah, so
Yeah.
they had a budget of almost 14-15 crores for Maxwell. It's clearly so now they'll have to go with Moeen Ali.
Okay, yeah, that looks it. Out of their 19.9 crore purse that was remaining going into this auction, CSK have gone right up to 14 and pulled out at 14.25. There were no more bids. RCB seem to be celebrating. So we do have Glenn Maxwell going to the Royal Challengers Bangalore. Whether that means he's going to the Chinnaswamy or not, we don't know. It's only a question of 1 year. But 14.25, I'll just pull up a list of the highest bids at auctions in the past. This would come close, and Maxwell has been there. But now let's get thoughts now that it has happened. Glenn Maxwell to RCB. Ajit Agarkar, first thoughts?
Oh, I mean, looks like it's going to be AB, Virat, and Maxwell sort of dominating that batting, isn't it? I think Josh Philippe did, had a couple of interesting innings of decent innings last time. Yeah, but hopefully, if I think one of the issues that they've always had is, apart from the bowling, is their middle order or lower middle order sort of batting or power hitting. Maybe he solves that problem, or at least they're hoping he does. Or maybe then AB comes to that spot and Maxwell, like Haji said, goes up top and gives them another dimension. Whatever the reason, if you spend 14.5 crores and if he doesn't perform, that's not money well spent. And at the moment, every time there's been a big bid for him, he struggled in the IPL.
They've tried this pattern in the past, Haji. They've had Chris Gale big money. They've had Shane Watson big money. They tried, Aaron Finch for not as much money. But this whole idea of one more strong batter to then make the AB Virat, split up AB and Virat and have a strong sort of top 5 or 6. Maxwell didn't fire in this sort of role for Punjab for a lot of years. Is this a good buy for you at this price?
Well, only time will tell, Ronak, won't it? This is standard practice for Glenn Maxwell. He lives not too far from here. I heard him let off some firecrackers, I think, not long ago in celebration. I think he's prepared for this every year. So It's not a surprise. We're all shocked, right? But we shouldn't be, because this happens every year for Glenn Maxwell. So, look, the only thing I can think of is that, if you're Simon Kadich and Virat Kohli, you need to try and stretch those three superstars out. We've seen in the past where they've jam-packed them all together and 3 wickets out and they're in trouble. So, whether they can stagnate them sort of 1, 4, and 6 or 1, 3, and 6, that's how they have to look at it.
Okay, 14.25 crore. He doesn't live too far from Brad Hodge. He might be looking to pick up a couple of houses next to Brad Hodge and come even closer with the way things are going.
He can buy the whole suburb, Ronak, after that.
Now, come on, Haji. You live in a posh part of Melbourne, I'm quite certain. Right. So 14.25. Maxwell is going to Bangalore. 1 year contracts, remember? So it's not about this being a long-term thing. They will have the option once the rules are clearer whether they want to retain someone like Maxwell. Can you do that when you've got the likes of Kohli, De Villiers, Yuzvendra Chahal? Be very interesting to see how this relationship goes. But Maxwell is going to go to RCB for the first time. Let's pull out some numbers on the previous sort of high scorers or high bidders at auctions in the past. And Maxwell has in the past been one of the most expensive buys at IPL auctions. You go all the way back to 2013. And that was significant for Glenn Maxwell, but it wasn't anywhere close to this. Pat Cummins was at 15.5 last year. And of course, Ben Stokes, I think, still holds that record for the most expensive buy. And we've got Glenn Maxwell in contention to be the most expensive player at this year's auction. Right. After Maxwell, there's going to be a bit of, I'm hoping there's going to be some calm after that Maxwell storm. And Shakib Al Hassan has had a bid that's come in. I think the Knight Riders seem to be interested. Shakib has played there in the past. He's up to a little under 3 crore at the moment. A return for Shakib Al Hassan looks like a seamless return to international cricket after his ICC suspension, Gaurav. Sunrisers did want to let go of him. can be a player that IPL franchises would be interested in.
Yeah, again, middle order, dependable, bowls 4 overs. His economy actually is pretty strong in the IPL. So he's a power play. He can bowl in the power play. He can bowl in the middle. And yeah, I think for the team like KKR, they want a backup for Sunil Narayan. We don't know what we are going to get with Sunil Narayan. His batting's gone down, and his action has always been a problem in the IPL. So he didn't play a few games last time. So I think he's played there before. So I think he'll be a backup for Sunil Narayan.
Punjab Kings, the newly christened or rechristened Punjab Kings, have made their entry into this year's auction. They seem to be interested for Shakib Al Hassan. There's a lot of things that they need to change as well, Ajit. So much of their squad has been released. Anil Kumble is still around, of course, but they released some big money players. Maxwell, one of them. Shakib I was going to come to Punjab Kings, but now it's confirmed that Shakib is going to the Knight Riders for 3.2. So let's get confirmed thoughts on that from Ajit Agarkar and Brad Hodge. To the Kolkata Knight Riders, didn't have much of a purse, 3.2 crore Shakib Al Hassan. You go with Gaurav, Ajit, that perhaps just a good replacement for Sunil Narayan?
Yeah, and I mean, again, I said it before, Andre Russell as well. You don't quite know what kind of fitness he comes with. We saw him struggle the last IPL. They bid earlier on, I think, for Maxwell as well. So whether they were looking for some sort of backup, a dependable experience, and if the tournament's in India, which it's likely to be, then the spin becomes very handy. So, and he's had the experience of not just playing in the IPL, but doing well in the IPL. So again, a really good buy.
Yep. Haji, thoughts? Shakib Al Hassan to KKR. Questions on both Russell and Narayan.
Yeah, with Ajit, I think that's a good purchase. I think there should have been a few other sides actually looking at Shakib, just his all-round ability. And the success that he's also had in the IPL as well. So when he's played, he's done particularly well with bat and ball. And the more the older he's got, I know he missed a bit of cricket, but the older he got, the more intelligent he's become as a player. So yeah, I think it's a smart buy. They know what he's like. They've had him there before, so that's a good purchase from KKR at a good price.
If you didn't know what the auction was all about, we've just known in the last 10 minutes. Glenn Maxwell goes for 14 crore and Shakib Al Hassan goes for 3 crores. So, or just over 3 crores.
You wouldn't sort of think that there's 1/5 of Glenn Maxwell as a player, would you? But that's the stupidity of the auction.
Moeen Ali, who GS has pointed out is the next alternative to Glenn Maxwell, just in terms of skill set. The versatile batsman who can bat anywhere from 1 to 5 or 6, you think, and the off-spinning option that he gives you is of interest to Punjab at a little over 3 crore at the moment. And there could be a good appetite for Moeen Ali as well. Give maybe a little cameo or just to show the franchises on his way out from the England Test side in that last innings at Chennai. Yes.
Yeah, but I think it was more about Maxwell or Moeen Ali to fill that off-spin slot and power hitting. And Moeen Ali can bat everywhere. He's shown for England he can open, he can bat in the middle. For his T20 franchise, he opened. So again, you're left with no choice. So if you let go of these two players, if you go look back at the roster, there aren't many overseas all-rounders, especially spin all-rounders, who are going to attract a lot of bids. So sometimes in these small auctions, it's not about what is the exact value of the player in terms of what he should actually get. It's obviously his potential, perception, auction dynamics. So even though, look, Maxwell's more valuable than ABD, if you look at that in terms of money. Nobody's going to agree that, right? But that's how it is. So same way for Moeen Ali. I think he's just lucky. It has nothing to do with that Chennai knock. I'm pretty sure it's just that the team should have planned and either Maxwell or Moeen Ali on who came first.
Yeah, sorry, Gaurav. I think one of the other things we missed is, didn't miss it, but Maxwell's off spin. I think one of the things that Chennai Super Kings did struggle with Harbhajan not going last year, or there wasn't an off spinner. They had everything turning back into the left hander, whether it was a left arm spinner or a couple of leg spinners, Tahir himself. So that's certainly one of the things that they must be looking for, and that's why the interest in Maxwell and now Moeen Ali as well. So they certainly need off spinner in their rank, because there are quite a few left-handed openers in the IPL.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of run through that Chennai team and see where the potential vacancy lies for the overseas player. You know that Faf du Plessis is your first choice opener, you'd think, alongside Ruturaj Gaikwad. You then have Sam Curran, Dwayne Bravo. Is there a case to play both those players? Would Moeen Ali be a good alternative for someone like Karan if the tournament is played in India, Ajit. And you've got the overseas seamers. You think that that Dhoni was reluctant to go that way, but between Ngidi and Hazelwood, whether he'd still play one of those players. Just thoughts on where Moeen Ali would fit into this 11 and the balance of the overseas players.
I mean, it's no secret that MS likes to control with spin.
Yes.
Again, we are in a little bit in the dark with in terms of the venues, or if it's going to be like a normal IPL where everyone plays home and away. We're not quite sure. So it'll depend, and as Haji said before as well, come April, May, it doesn't matter where you're playing. Pitches do slow down; they are a bit tired, and spin can play a big part. And that was a clear sort of weak, I wouldn't call it a weakness, but shortcoming that they had in the previous IPL. They were looking for an off spinner, someone to turn the ball away, because there are quite a few left-handers. Like I said, in a lot of the teams or openers that are left-handers, and an off spinner is very handy at the top of the order.
The other point, Ronak, is Punjab have to spend 30 crores. There's a 75% limit of the overall spend they have to spend. It's actually I was doing the math, they have to spend 35 crores and they need nine players. So it's almost an average of 4 crores per player. And obviously you're not going to you're going to get some few players for 50 lakhs, 60 lakhs. So it's funny that if they don't spend, they just have to give that money to BCCI. So they might be in a situation where they might not be able to spend that 33 crores. This mini auction could result in that as well. So they're free to buy whoever they want. They'll not care about the money, because when you calculate, it doesn't come up to 35 crores. So yeah, that's an interesting challenge they need to solve.
They'll almost be pleading to some teams to just help them raise the bid.
Absolutely. And with Maxwell gone, I don't see too many players going about 10 crores. So how are Punjab going to spend that money, or just give it for free to BCCI? Something they have to solve.
Well, I think I think Shivan Dubé might fetch a fair purse actually, so he might be one. But what an irony, eh? You go to an auction with a fair amount of purse, then you just have to give half of it to the BCCI because you haven't spent it. It's incredible.
Oh God. Moeen Ali is still of interest, and Punjab are very much interested in him. A little over 7 crore now, the bid. So it's between them and CSK. Very interesting to see who's hungrier for Moeen Ali at the moment. Just run through that Punjab side and just have a look at who all they let go of, right? So they've let go of Maxwell, Sheldon Cottrell went away, Jimmy Neesham, K. Gautam. So there is enough room for a player like Moeen Ali, you think, to fit into a side like Punjab. Ajit?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's Punjab Kings now, isn't it? It's no more Kings 11. So, towards the latter half of the year, they started well, lost a couple of close games, but their batting seems quite sorted. And it is probably with Nicholas Pooran. I mean, Chris Gale had a really good finish to the IPL. Mayank, KL Rahul, those sorts of guys, there's enough batting. So, Moeen Ali, again, experienced guy. And spin. I think spin could make a huge difference on how this tournament goes if it is played in India. So there is enough room for Moeen Ali in that particular lineup.
Confirmation is 7 crore Moeen Ali to Chennai Super Kings. So that's happened. Moeen's going to be in yellow, playing under MS Dhoni in the next IPL auction. Let's get thoughts on that. GS, you expected it. If they didn't get Maxwell, they were going to get Moeen.
Yeah, I think that was pretty clear, because that, like Ajit said, the off spinner as well as Moeen can bat anywhere. And see, you need. They already have a good combination, and CSK need more or less backups. You don't know what you're going to get from Bravo. You don't know what you're going to get from Faf, because he may not be available. So they've got Uthappa to cover up for that Faf slot, and Moeen can be an opener, or Moeen can play in the middle as well. So I think this was on expected lines. I think they would have still wanted Maxwell, but I think now they've saved up almost 6.5 crores, right? So good.
All right.
They can maybe buy someone else, some Indian player.
All right, Ajit, CSK, Moeen Ali, could fit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was quite evident. Guys like Warner, Decock, Padikkal, that you name all the teams, and every team seems to have a left-hander, and a lot of these spinners now do bowl with the new ball, can create trouble. I mean, Ashwin does it successfully. Harbhajan's done it over the years, and that was one of the things. At least there was no option that CSK had, so it's always good to have an option. And if the conditions do demand, you've got to have that option, whether he plays in the first 11 or whether he's on the bench. At least you have that option. And the more the options, if your bench is strong enough, generally in a long tournament like the IPL, it certainly helps.
Yeah, I mean, he likes to go. He likes a lot of safe players. MS Dhoni doesn't. He knows what to expect from them. Haji, we saw Dwayne Bravo and Sam Curran play together last season when we thought that you'd only see one or the other play. They already have a player like Mitchell Santner, but of course, Moeen Ali is a different skill set. Can he fit into that 11 straight away? Is he a sure starter now? When you've got Bravo, you've got Curran, who had a very good IPL last year, Faf du Plessis, and you've got the overseas seamers.
Yeah, and I think for sure. And the other thing that you mentioned there is the left-handed combination as well. So with Suresh Raina probably being the only one in that top order, then Moeen Ali will certainly help that out. The other thing is that when you play down at Chennai, it does generally spin and stay low. Moeen Ali is a gun player of spin. So I think MSD is very shrewd on the two players that he's gone for, in that, Glenn Maxwell is also a pretty handy player of spin, even though he hasn't shown it in the past IPL. But Moeen Ali is definitely a gun player of spin. So, yeah, I think that's a shrewd, smart buy from CSK.
All right. Shivam Dubey is up for grabs at the moment, a little over 3.5 crore. And Sunrisers Hyderabad put their paddle up for the first time in this year's auction. So they're interested in the all-round abilities of Dubey, released by RCB for big money. Rajasthan Royals seem very interested in Shivam Dubey. They've come with a significant purse, and GS, they're in a similar sort of situation. They've got to spend a fair chunk of that. They've come in with 37.85 crore to spend. And like you rightly pointed out, the franchises have to spend 75% of that overall purse limit at the auction. Dubey, let's see the players that were released by Rajasthan. They let go of a lot of players: Steve Smith, Tom Curran, O'Shane Thomas, Robin Uthappa, among those that started for them. Stokes and Butler, you think certainly have room. We're trying to see where Shivam Dubey would fit in, but there is a spot, isn't there, with Rahul Tewatia and that middle order for a player like Shivam Dubey? GS?
Yeah, definitely. I think the fact is you have Mahipal Lomro, you have Rahul Tewatia, you have Riyan Parag. That's the middle order, and they need some muzzle in the middle because Stokes was opening and Butler was batting at 4. So they want that Indian all-rounder. And when you look I actually expected Dubey to go slightly more than what he's actually gone, because when you look at the roster list again, seam bowling all-rounders from India. After Dubey, the next only option according to the order of the list is a domestic player called Venkatesh Iyer from Madhya Pradesh. So that's the upside again. So Dubey brings good balance now. He's a left-hander. So again, he'll play in the middle as a seam bowling all-rounder.
Yeah, 4.4 crores. So that's confirmation to the Rajasthan Royals for Shivam Dubey, who Ajit Agarkar has seen enough of playing for while Dubey was playing for Mumbai and Ajit was part of the setup there. Thoughts, Ajit? 4.4 crore. Could he have gone for a bit more? Was that fair for Shivam Dubey? And what about his fit at Rajasthan Royals?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that's more or less. It's just how the auction dynamics work. I think. I thought he might go for a bit more. Like GS said, there aren't too many guys who do that, but he probably hasn't shown enough in the opportunities that he's got over the last couple of years for RCB that people want to spend more money on him. So, but he certainly has some potential, and he is playing in the Indian, or he is part of the Indian setup right now as far as T20 cricket is concerned. So, hopefully, with a bit more experience this year, he can show what kind of potential that he has, or realizes his potential. He certainly has it. Can hit the long ball down the order, but he's got to show it on a more consistent basis.
Dubey is a middle order player, Haji. The one thing that we were looking at Rajasthan Royals and seeing last year, Smith started opening. Josh Butler, who was so good while opening, was pushed down, and Ben Stokes was looked at as an opener as well. Now, how much of that was to do with just the UAE sort of setup and whatnot? But Sanju Samson wants to bat up top. Butler's great up top. Stokes was sent up top. So all of a sudden, what does Shivam Dubey do? Does he allow for more players to just bat where they want to?
Everyone wants to bat up top, Ranok. There's no accountability up the front. You just have a swing, and I mean, look. Let's be honest. We all know this, right? That the middle order is gold. They're the ones that get the job done when you come in, needing 10 to 12 runs and over, and you win the game. So Shivam Dubey, he hasn't showed the potential, or he's got plenty of potential. He hasn't showed it on the results in the IPL, but I think it's only a matter of time. I think that's a good buy for Rajasthan. They like to, I think there was a bit of confusion there last year. It didn't roll that well. But having said that, though, they're only one game outside the finals. So he'll complement the likes of Ben Stokes. There's some heavy hitting there with David Miller and also Sanju Samson. Again, as a young leader, he'll be able to take on Shivam Dubé and give him a specific role and just hone his skill down at number 6.
Okay. Chris Morris is our $2 million baby at this auction, and we knew we were going to have a few. He's already up to 8 crore very quickly in what was an intense or really quick auction, two-way tussle between Royal Challengers Bangalore and Mumbai. So Bangalore and Mumbai. Now, this is brilliant, isn't it? To be up against Mumbai Indians do not have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of slots to fill either. They wanted to go for one overseas player. They're now up against a Bangalore side that have spent as much as 14 and a half or so for a Glenn Maxwell, which has significantly reduced their purse. But that's what it is. Now it's up to 9 crore. I'm just quickly checking what was it that they released Chris Morris for. He was at 10 crore, 10 crore, up to 9. It comes back to Brad Hodges' point. It's at 9.5 now as I speak. To try and release a player, but show an interest to buy him back cheaper. We're at 50 lakhs cheaper as things stand, Hodgie.
Never works, Ronak. It's like going to the airport and getting charged for extra luggage. You know what I'm saying? It happens to every time. They think everyone gets around the table. You know what? We'll play a smart game. We'll buy him back cheap at the auction. If you like a player and you think that he can do wonderful things for your franchise, keep him. What you pay for him, it's going to cost you double the next time around.
All right. Mumbai Indians had no doubt in their minds. RCB took some time, but Mumbai have taken it to 10, at which point RCB have fallen out. So they were not going to pay exactly what they paid till last year. They were willing to pay up to 50 lakhs less, but they were not. I think they would have been absolutely brilliant if they would have picked up Morris again for 9.5. Now, Rajasthan Royals were watching this very closely, and they've let the Mumbai and Bangalore have it. And just
MI have actually, sorry, Ranak, MI have actually paid almost 75% of what they purse just for Chris Morris. So, like Ajit had mentioned at the start of the show, I think they're very clear that they want Pollard's backup to be Morris. And and they're okay to get other 2 more cheaper fast bowlers. I think that's their plan.
There is enough room for Pollard and Morris certainly to play in that side. They let go of the overseas seamer. And therefore, they're willing to go as high as 11 now. So Rajasthan, even though they've got the muscle and they may very well outbid the Mumbai Indians, but
they can maximum go up to what 15 point after which Mumbai can't buy anybody.
They hold 15.35. They've gone up to 11. Ajit, thoughts on that? Morris at over 11 for Mumbai. You know what they want, but Rajasthan interested in him at over 11.25 as well.
Not surprised. I think very few people with his sort of skill sets, if he can keep fit. And he's had performances in the IPL which have been very good. So he is a proven sort of performer in the IPL. It's not an unknown, so not surprised at all. And especially you could see it. I mean, if Mitchell Stark was here, I think Mumbai would be looking at someone like a Mitchell Stark as well. After they released Pattinson and Coulter-Nile and Malinga's done as well. So they were certainly going to try, and Chris Morris just fits the bill. I mean, would make them really strong. As it is, they're so strong at the moment. With his inclusion, will make it quite strong because his bowling is as good as it is, but batting low down the order is also very effective.
Yeah, 12.5 and counting. So Mumbai have no reservations about this at all. Doesn't matter that they've got just 15. Who knows? Maybe they'll just throw everything at him because if they don't get anybody else at this auction, they've still got 11. You could even argue 13 or 14 players that are good enough. So
they must have identified 50 lakh fast bowlers who people may not pick up. So
yeah, potentially.
The other thing is that Mumbai, whoever they pick up, whether they're a 10 lakh player or not, they're not going to play anyway. So it's irrelevant. They'll just go chips in 15 crores all the way.
Yeah, so they may as well start at 15 and just.
They
might as well. Absolutely.
It's a fair point because they don't need to keep anything back. They don't have other slots.
I mean, Hardik Pandya might start bowling by the time IPL comes around, so that'll be another option. I think they've got Dhaval Kulkarni in the squad, and if there is an injury at the last minute, they'll always get a replacement for it. So it's such a strong squad or such a strong 12 or 13 players that if you add another really experienced and a good player, it is only going to make them stronger.
I genuinely thought that the wrist spin department, which we keep highlighting for Mumbai every year, is somewhere that they look to get a backup for Rahul Chahar, who didn't finish the IPL last year. Maybe that was tactical. They got Jayant Yadav to play in the final. But whether they'd want to keep some purse balance for a potential wrist spinner, it looks like Mumbai have bailed out. So it looks like they wanted to go to a certain amount, which was almost 90% of their balance purse. They went up to 13. But after that, Rajasthan are continuing to outmuscle them. And suddenly Kings 11 Punjab have jumped in now, or rather Punjab Kings, which I have to get used to saying. So Punjab have jumped in. They've got the money. And GS has pointed out they better spend it on a player rather than gift it in a coffer to BCCL. So GS, Punjab interested for
they had Jimmy Neesham last year, who didn't really do so well. They had Hardest Willian, who also they tried, who didn't do really well. So they need to fill that all-rounder slot, very key slot. Their batting, remember, was pretty thin after your top 4 or top 5. I think after Deepak Hooda, it was pretty thin. So they need to find a death bowler as well. And obviously Morris fits both, but whether he's worth 14.25, like I said, it's hard, but both these teams have money to kill, so Morris is the lucky one.
I mean,
Maxwell just went for 14 crores. Surely Morris is worth 14 crores.
Yeah. I tell you what, I'm very curious.
Just the fact that Morris gets injured so often and doesn't finish a series, that's what I'm just concerned about.
Okay,
so what's worse, getting injured or averaging 10?
I'm very curious to know what happens if you get picked for 14-15 crores and you're injured. Who pays the medical bills? Is that because he's got plenty to pay for those? He's at 14.75. Yes, Haji?
I'll give you a tip, Ronak. If you're getting 14.25 crores, you're doing everything in your best interest not to get injured before that state of play. So he will be 100% in cotton wool up until April, trust me.
Okay, he's at 15, which I think puts him at the highest bid for this auction very quickly. So he's gone ahead of Glenn Maxwell.
Let's run a poll. Will he be bigger? Will he get more money than Virat Kohli? Will he be IPL's most expensive player? 17 crores is the target.
What's Virat Kohli at? 17, I thought, right?
What's 17? Yeah, that's why I said he's now on par with almost on par with Pat Cummins and MS Dhoni.
Yeah, 15. Dhoni 15. I think Rohit Sharma would be 15, wouldn't he, for the Mumbai Indians? So yeah, your key retainee 15 and a half. So we're still
if he's above 17, it's pretty ridiculous.
I'm not surprised at all, really.
Right.
Because he's
very surprised.
That fits the bill.
Okay, Gaurav is very surprised. Ajit is saying not surprised. I'm thinking of just the teams now. Clearly, we could see why Mumbai wanted him. Punjab, you could make a case. Rajasthan are willing to go up to 16. Now, Ajit, Rajasthan have Stokes, Butler, Archer. That's 3 lock-in overseas guys. You think that this would make it again a 4th lock-in overseas where you're not then too worried about the reserve overseas players, that you've got your 4-gun overseas players. Can you afford that with someone like Morris when you know that there is that question mark on injury? For a team like Rajasthan.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to strengthen any team. I mean, fitness now, it's you just hope that all the players are fit. You can't. Over the last couple of years, he's missed a few games through injury. But when he's fit, you can see he performs. So if he does that for half the tournament or 8 or 9 games, he's going to win you 2 or 3 games by himself. So or has the ability to do that. So you may as well try and do that and build a team around that. So no, I mean the price, you can be surprised at any price, but I can understand why teams want him, and because 2 or 3 teams are that desperate to get him because of his all-round ability, the price is always going to go up. It may not agree to our minds, 16, 17, 18 crores, because that is a value of probably, or should be the value of the best player in the tournament, or one of the best players in the tournament. But that's how these small auctions work, and everyone knows it's for 1 year. They don't have to pay him that money for the next 3 or 4 years or whatever the contracts are. So they are trying to get him as desperately as they can.
100%, and we must reiterate here. We said this on and off during Cover the IPL that it's no player's fault what they go for. It's absolutely not a player's fault what they go for. And Chris Morris, it's not his fault. He's going at 16 crore, 25 lakh and counting.
And Morris covers two very, very key roles. He's a death bowler and he bats the last 3-4 overs. So he does, and his death bowling stats in the IPL are really good. My only concern was his availability. Otherwise, definitely I can understand why they're going. But he's never finished the last 3 seasons, which was my concern.
There is the South Africa-Pakistan series. For what it's worth, the Morris is not part of the South Africa setup.
He's not played a game since the IPL, if I remember right. So
for a long time. Yeah, so that's very interesting. I think now
that start wearing his shoes and practicing.
He better be available. You don't want the Cricket South Africa to then come and say, no, that's it. You know what's going to happen if that's.
I don't think he'll be sticking his hand up, Ronak. I think there'll be a call to Graham Smith saying, I think my time for South Africa's done. Thank you.
It's still interesting. A player of such high value, and it was predictable. If Ajit Agarkar has called it, clearly he's read the franchise's interest in this. GS makes a valid point on injury and fitness, but you're always hoping that the player will be fit, right? Bangalore went up to 9.5 for a player they released for 10. You'd think now if they would have just held Chris Morris, would have still had a very decent purse going into this auction at a little over 25 crore coming into this, which is pretty good. And they would have had Maxwell and Morris potentially. I don't know if that would have changed the way they would have gone after Glenn Maxwell if they had 25 instead of 35 crore. But I'm just trying to think whether this is a player that a team like Bangalore should have retained. Haji?
I got no doubt he was a player that they should have retained. Yeah. Look, I'm not sure why they released him. As Ajit's pointed out, he's only one of probably 3 or 4 players that can bowl up in high 140s and touch 150, bowl at the death, can whack him. And the only thing is injury. But all in all, yeah, I think he was definitely always a 9 crore player. So I just didn't think you were going to get him for anything under that. Look at that.
Okay,
wow.
Rajasthan have got him. So in he goes to the Royals. 16.25 crore for Rajasthan. Ajit Agarkar, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Steve Smith, they've released what he was on 12 crores, wasn't it?
Yes.
That's almost a replacement for him. They've had to pay a bit more, but they get 2 players in that all-rounder. So suddenly makes their top or their 4 overseas guys almost a certainty. What they have, and it's a good addition. I know we'll never get our heads around the price that certain players go for or the way the auction works, but it is what it is. And as far as the players concerned, it's a really good buy for them.
All right, fair enough. That means David Miller and Rutai would be reserve overseas players now. You'd wonder if they come in. Yes,
they might as well leave their cricket shoes at home, I reckon.
Well, maybe not, because Gaurav points out more than once that you never know with Morris and the injury. 16.25. GS, thoughts?
Just a thought that this is the most expensive player bought in an auction. Obviously, Kohli didn't get bought in an auction. So Chris Morris at 16.25 is greater than Yuvraj at 16 crores for Delhi in 2015. So just, I really didn't expect this coming into today.
Yeah. You almost seem really shocked, GS. I mean, come on. Yeah, let's pull up. Don't feel so bad about this. Who knows? Morris is going to have the season of his life.
Yeah, just he better do, because he has to. And they're going to be playing in. If they're playing in Mumbai, it's not that good. It's not going to be easy for bowlers. If they're going to play at Wankhede and Brabant and other venues around Mumbai, it's not going to be easy at all. So,
but that's where you need better quality bowlers as well. Then you can't, because those venues are so difficult to bowl. If those are the venues, we don't quite know.
Absolutely.
You need quality in your attack as well.
All right. So 16.25 is history made. Chris Morris has become the most expensive player to be bought at an IPL auction, and he will go to the Rajasthan Royals to play in a quartet of extremely qualified overseas players. You think in Ben Stokes, Joss Butler, and Jofra Archer. So that's a heck of a team that Rajasthan are building together. Sanju Samson is now captain, of course, and with that we've also come to the first break at the auction. I'll just take quick confirmations on whether David Malan was shown any interest at all while we were discussing Chris Morris. He is the number 1 ranked T20 batsman, and David Malan has gone to Kings 11 Punjab, rather Punjab Kings. I can't get used to this. Punjab Kings for 1.5. So there you go. He's listed in the all-rounders category. He can bowl a bit of spin, can David Malan, but he's known more, of course, for his batting credentials. And he's gone to Punjab for 1.5. Let's get thoughts on that. Haji?
Yeah, he's a pretty good player, isn't he? I mean, whether he stacks up against Alex Hales or Jason Roy, there's a couple of top top order players. I'm not sure, but it's a pretty good record what he shows there.
He didn't quite have as good a big bash, did he? It wasn't as big a big bash as a lot of people expected, Audrey.
No, and it's never easy to walk into a different competition and fire. So, that might be one thing which, might be a bit of a concern coming into the IPL for the first time. It's a lot of pressure an overseas player filling a void. So, the other thing is a left-hander as well, and that'll partner Nicholas Puran, which might be an option. But having said that, he's a pretty good player. There's no doubt about that. Was there better options out there? I would have probably gone for a more explosive player at the top if I was in charge there.
In fairness, though, Ajit, the top, KL Rahul, Mayank Agarwal, Nicholas Puran, had to bat 4 because of Chris Gale. You think Malan is a like for a Chris Gale? Can he play in the starting 11 for Punjab?
Probably not. That's the only thing, isn't it?
Yeah, all right, fair enough. Ajit?
No, I think that's why they've got him, isn't it? Chris Gale, you don't quite know. He took a lot of time to actually play the tournament or get fit for the tournament last time around. And this is, okay, it's only a few months apart from the previous IPL. But you don't quite know what kind of shape he'd be in, Chris Gale, and whether he can play the entire tournament. So that is like for like replacement, if you like, for Chris Gale or competition for Chris Gale, because Nicholas Puran certainly is going to play. So I don't think it's such a bad buy.
All right, GS. Punjab would have hoped by what you just said that someone bids higher so they can pay a little more for David Malan, but they've got him at base price.
They're going to struggle reaching that figure of 33 crores. I think now Jai Richardson or these Jameson, one of these two are now going to be lucky. But yeah, the backup for Gale, I think that's a pretty obvious one, especially with Gale's injury, like Ajit said. And Malan's not been, he's not a great player of spin. If you see his stats, and generally he struggled. He's a very slow starter. These have been some criticisms of David Malan for quite some time now. Yes, he's the number 1 ranked player, but that really doesn't mean much when it comes to these IPL performances. So, yeah, again, I'm not personally too surprised about this. Good pick for Punjab. They need somebody at the top.
Okay, fair enough. This is where the IPL auction has taken a break. Let's just get quick comments before we take a break as well from Ajit Agarkar, Brad Hodge, and Gaurav on just the trends that we're looking at after the first 2 sets are done. We've already had 2 big. I'm guessing we will not see a player more expensive than this for the remainder of the auction. But never say never. With Glenn Maxwell going at a little over 14 crore and Chris Morris going a little over 16 crore. We're seeing some trends too. Chennai were interested in Maxwell. They didn't get him. They got Moeen Ali. Mumbai were ready to go all out almost for Chris Morris. Didn't quite get him. We've also seen a couple of other trends. We're seeing Rajasthan spend big already. They've picked up Chris Morris. They picked up Shivam Dubey. Other than that, Shakib Al Hasan has gone to Kolkata Knight Riders. Let's get thoughts from just trends of the auction before we come back. Ajit, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, these are the experienced players that you get, experienced international players. Most of them have been successful in the IPL as well. And clearly, I mean, if you look at Chennai Super Kings, the people they were bidding for, Maxwell, I think it was more for his off-spin than his batting. In my opinion, Moeen Ali provides a bit more of that, bit more consistency he might give them, but they certainly have an off-spinning option now in their ranks. Morris was, I always felt there were going to be a few teams looking for him. Didn't quite know what price he'd go at, but he's certainly had a good day. And Glenn Maxwell does what Glenn Maxwell does in the IPL auctions. So no real surprises there. But you can see the trends. People are going for experienced players, particularly because it's just for one season.
Haji?
Yeah, we saw it start in a particular trend, didn't we? The first set sort of go by and, it all heated up when the all-rounders came out. So, yeah, it wasn't surprising. It's been a trend in the past and it's continued again. But all in all, we've seen a fierce bidding for, from franchises just to fill that one sort of spot. So I think that'll continue. I think you'll see some real action for, Jai Richardson in the future, maybe for Mumbai, but they'll just be really specific on who they want to target.
Yep, Jai Richardson is up for grabs in the 4th set that'll come after this short break. Kyle Jameson a little later in that. JS, your thoughts just in terms of trends? You've already said Morris was a surprise to you. Any other trends and patterns that you're predicting for the rest of the auction?
I think fast bowlers are going to be premium, and still there are teams which need to cover that base. Like if we look at Rajasthan, they have Archer and Morris, and death bowling was a big concern for them last year. The Indian bowlers didn't really step up. So now with Archer and Morris, that aspect is totally sorted for them. So they might just require an overseas batsman to kind of replace Smith or have a backup, more or less, mostly backup slots. And same is the case with RCB. After getting Maxwell, they have their first 11 almost there. So we need to wait and watch how Punjab go about. I'm very curious. Punjab and Mumbai obviously have come in with a plan to get Morris. They failed. It'll be interesting to see what their backup options are. And I think Jamieson and Jai kind of fit that. They want a person who can bat as well. They had Nathan Coulter-Nile. Now they went for Morris. So they need one more batsman at number 7 who can bowl very well. So the only two possible contenders are these guys. So again, we might see them also go bid very high for this one player. So they can go up to 11, 12 now.
Okay, fair enough. Time for us to take a bit of a break now. Big thank you to Ajit Agarkar, Brad Hodge, GS, but they're not done. They're far from done. There's a lot more bidding that's going to happen in the auction. And now we know that some hands have been revealed by the franchises. The likes of Maxwell and Morris have taken a fair bite out of the purse of RCB and Rajasthan respectively. So we'll be back after the next break of the auction. Keep an eye out on ESPNcricinfo.com as well as the mobile app. We've got the live blog running. Of course, viewers in India, the auction is being telecast on the Star Sports Network, and we will be back on ESPN Cricinfo Auction Day, powered by Realme X7 5G and X7 Pro 5G in just a little while from now.
Realme X7 Pro 5G. Experience the future. Realme, dare to leap.